Hey anomaly, the problem, the issue, the name in everybody's mouth. Come here for a second. Sit with this, because you need to understand something very clearly. Your name got 'em heated. They're arguing, fighting, lurking, refreshing, stalking, spiraling over you, over who you might be touching, over who might be touching you. And you still wake up thinking you're not that important. You don't see it, do you? You think you're just existing, posting your little story, replying when you feel like it, going out, living. Meanwhile, there are people somewhere right now, phone in hand, voice raised, heart racing, saying your name through gritted teeth like it's a curse and a prayer at the same time. Why were you liking their post? Why was your phone face down? Why did you smile at them like that? Are you still talking to them? Them equals you. They are fighting over you like you're a limited edition item that might sell out at midnight. And you still doubt your value. Let me tell you something in a way nobody has said to you. You are not problematic. You are not too much. You are not messy. You are desirable. You are memorable. You are impactful. When your name enters the room, the energy changes. People suddenly sit up straighter. They replay old conversations. They double-check their notifications. And yeah, some of them get mad, heated, pressed, tight in the chest. Why? Because your existence threatens the little fake stability they built on lies, insecurity, and half-healed wounds. You think it's about you being bad? No, it's about them being scared. Scared that someone like you exists. Scared that you can walk in and shift the dynamic without even trying. Scared that the person they're with looks at you a little too long, laughs a little too hard, replies a little too fast. You didn't break their trust. You just exposed how weak it already was. Look at the pattern. They stalk your page, analyze your every move, screenshot your stories, zoom in on who's in your reflection, ask mutuals what you've been up to, argue with each other over what you meant with a single emoji, and you're sitting there wondering if you're worth it, wondering if you're the villain, wondering if maybe you should shrink, be quieter, dim it down, listen carefully. You are not the villain, but you are absolutely the plot twist. You know what really drives them insane? It's not just that people want you. It's that you don't beg to be wanted back. You don't chase them. You respond when you feel like. You disappear when your spirit says, nah, this ain't it. You stop replying when the vibe feels off. You move on without a grand speech. And that right there is spiritual warfare to an insecure person. They're used to being the center of gravity. They're used to people orbiting them, tolerating them, worshiping them, accepting crumbs. Then there's you. You're not desperate. You're not clinging. You're not begging, please don't leave. You're like, if you go, you go. Someone better will slide in. They hate that. Because deep down, they know it's true. Let's be real for a second. You've been made to feel guilty for being wanted, guilty for being liked, guilty because somebody's partner couldn't stay loyal in your presence, so they turn you into the scapegoat. You're a homewrecker. You're the problem. You're toxic. You did this. No. You showed up as yourself. They showed up as unhealed. You didn't wreck their home. Their home was already cracked. Your presence just made the cracks visible. And here's the dark little joke the universe likes to play. They'll gossip about you. They'll drag your name through group chats. They'll call you crazy, manipulative, whatever word they feel like throwing around that day. But they'll still check your story every single day. Heard you blocked me. Heard you said this. Heard you're doing that. Oh, so you're not watching me, but somehow you know my every move. Interesting. That's not hatred. That's obsession in a cheap costume. Look at how powerful you are. Your silence gets discussed. Your absence gets questioned. Your presence rearranges the hierarchy in the room. Someone's heart is beating fast because they saw your name pop up on a screen. Someone is rereading old messages from you, trying to decode where they lost you. Someone is arguing with their partner right now, saying, "Just be honest. Do you still like them? Do you still talk to them? Do you still think about them? And you're just trying to drink water and mind your business." You need to stop apologizing for the effect you have. You didn't ask to be this magnetic, but here you are. You didn't ask for your laugh to echo in their head at 3 a.m., but it does. You didn't ask for your aura to be addictive, but it is. So now you've got two options. 1. Shrink yourself, play small, pretend you're not that big of a deal. 2. Accept that you are the main character in more stories than you realize and move accordingly. Guess which one they want you to pick? They want you small, quiet, ashamed of your own shine. Because if you ever fully wake up to who you are, game over. Listen, you're not normal. You're not low impact. You're the type of person people remember randomly in the middle of the day. You're the "damn, I really fumbled that one" memory. You're the "I know I said I was over them, but" confession. You are the unfinished business in a lot of hearts. And yeah, that creates chaos. It makes people insecure. It makes couples argue. It makes exes stalk. It makes friends secretly compare themselves to you. But that chaos, that mess, that emotion, it's proof of your weight in this world. Boring people don't cause that. Forgettable people don't spark that. Only someone with real presence does. Now let's talk about you for a second. Under all the noise, you've been hurt too. You've been lied to. You've been picked last. You've been betrayed. You've been made to feel like an option, like a backup plan, like a secret. And somewhere along the way, you started thinking, maybe I'm hard to love. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I ask for too much. No, you're not hard to love. You are hard to play. You are hard to lie to. You are hard to control. And that's where the tension comes from. People who want power, not partnership, will always have a problem with you. Notice how they talk about you. It's not that deep. They're doing too much. They want attention. They think they're all that. Pay attention. That's projection. You don't need attention. Attention just follows you. You don't think you're all that. You just move like you know your worth. You don't do too much. They just do too little and feel threatened. So what do? They build little narratives about you. They tell people their version. They twist your confidence into arrogance, your standards into toxicity, your boundaries into attitude. Because if they can label you, they don't have to face themselves. Here's the part that stings a bit. Some of the people arguing over you, they don't even deserve access to you. They're fighting, crying, stalking, stressing over who you might be touching. Meanwhile, when they had you, they were lazy, bare minimum, breadcrumbs, inconsistent, selfish, and somehow you walked away feeling guilty, feeling like you're asking for too much by wanting effort, by wanting clarity, by wanting respect. No, you didn't ask for too much. You just asked the wrong person. Read this twice. If your name is causing this much chaos, It's because your presence is a privilege. Not everyone deserves front row access to you. Not everyone deserves your softness. Not everyone deserves your late night calls, your deep talks, your awkward laughs, your real tears. You are not a free trial for people who haven't done the work to show up correctly. They can lurk, they can argue, they can spiral, they can refresh your page 50 times a day. None of that means they are qualified to stand next to you. Let's go darker for a moment. Some people don't want you. They want the validation of having you. They want to be able to say, yeah, they're into me. Yeah, I used to talk to them. Yeah, they'd answer if I texted. They want your name to boost their status, your presence to upgrade their image, your interest to patch their insecurity. So when you pull back, when you detach, when you stop feeding their ego, they panic, they get loud, they start arguments with the person they're with, they accuse, they become paranoid, not because they suddenly care about loyalty, but because they fear losing control. You have to be very careful now, because this is the stage where a lot of people like you fall into the trap of guilt. You're right. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I should tone it down so they feel safer. Maybe I should be available all the time. No. Don't punish yourself because people can't handle your impact. You should not have to dim your personality to be palatable. You should not have to dress less, speak less, laugh less, exist less, just so someone insecure doesn't feel threatened. If your existence threatens them, let it. If your glow exposes their shadows, so be it. If your name ruins their illusion of control, that's their demon to wrestle, not yours. Let's flip this. Instead of thinking, why are they talking about me? Try, of course they're talking about me. Of course they are. You walked away and actually meant it. You leveled up instead of waiting for closure. You started glowing harder after they lost access. You didn't go back and beg for the bare minimum. People are not used to that. They're used to you sticking around while they half love you. They're used to you forgiving the unforgivable. They're used to you abandoning yourself to be chosen. But now, you're the one choosing. You're choosing peace. You're choosing standards. You're choosing energy that matches yours. And suddenly they've got group meetings about you. Suddenly you're cold. Suddenly you're heartless. Suddenly you changed. Yes, you changed. You stopped tolerating what was hurting you. And they're mad because they no longer get the version of you they could use. You know what's really funny? They're scared of you touching someone else. Scared of you laughing with someone new. Scared of you giving what you gave them to someone more deserving. And they should be. Because someone out there is praying for a soul like yours. Someone out there is begging the universe for a real one. Someone out there is hoping they get a chance at the love you carry in your chest. While these other ones are too busy arguing and fighting and lurking, there's someone quietly healing, growing, preparing to treat you right. The day they meet you, oh, chaos. Because they won't just touch you, they will honor you, they will respect you, they will choose you publicly, loudly, consistently, and every single person who mishandled you will feel that like a punch. Let's talk empowerment, because all this chaos around your name is pointless if you don't turn it into discipline. If your name got 'em heated, that means you hold emotional power in people's lives are more unforgettable than you realize trigger unhealed. Parts of others expose how fragile fake love really is. So use that awareness properly. Stop giving that level of access to just anyone. Stop trauma bonding and then calling it chemistry. Stop mistaking attention for affection and obsession for love. You know the difference now. Love respects you in rooms you're not in. Lust just wants to claim you in rooms everybody sees. Ego wants to control you. Real energy wants to protect you. They're not scared of you touching someone else. They're scared of you finally being loved correctly. Take a breath. Really feel this. You are not dramatic. You are not extra. You are not asking for fairy tales. You are simply done with half-texts, almost relationships, secret links. We're not official, but I'm just bad at texting. It's not what it looks like. You're overreacting. No, you're done. And when you're really done, your energy stops negotiating. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're arguing. That's why they're lurking like FBI interns. They can feel you slipping out of their control. You need to start walking like you know your effect, not in an arrogant way, not in a I'm better than everybody way, just in a calm, grounded, I know who I am now way. The kind of way where you don't chase explanations, you don't beg for bare minimum responses, you don't compete for a spot in anyone's life, you don't show up where you're not valued, you don't need to prove you're valuable. The arguments, the fights, the stalking, the jealousy, that's your proof. People don't fight over what means nothing. People don't stalk what they're indifferent about. People don't rewrite history for someone who didn't matter. So instead of doubting yourself, observe the evidence. They're afraid of you moving on. Good. Move on anyway. They're afraid of you giving your energy to someone wiser. Do it. They're afraid of your glow getting brighter without them in the picture. Turn the brightness all the way up. Because the truth is, as long as you keep looking back, you're feeding the very thing that hurt you. You are not obligated to stay where your spirit is starving. There are people who will never let your name be spoken disrespectfully in their presence. There are people who will see you and think, I'm not losing this one. There are people who will choose you so clearly, the arguing, the fighting, the lurking becomes irrelevant. But for that to happen, you have to step fully into your power. Not half. Not on days you feel cute. Not when people are praising you. Even on days you feel insecure. Even when you're tired. Even when you're lonely. Remember, your name alone has people heated. Imagine what happens when you fully tip into yourself. Imagine when you stop replying to low-effort energy. Stop entertaining people who are confused. Stop letting your loneliness sign contracts your standards never agreed to. Imagine how much quieter your life gets when you realize not everyone deserves access to your time, your body, your heart, your mind. You're not just someone they used to text. You're not just some sneaky link. You're not just a chapter in their story. You're the plot point. Everything shifted around. Friendships changed because of you. Relationships collapsed after you left. Self-esteem got tested because of you. They might never admit it out loud, but they felt losing you, and they're going to keep feeling it each time they see you glowing, laughing, living, healing, upgrading, evolving, touching places they'll never be invited to again. So let them argue, let them fight, let them lurk. You've got bigger things to do than sit in the comments section of your own life defending your character. You are not responsible for the stories they tell about you to make themselves feel better. You are responsible for the story you live. And right now you're at the part where the main character realizes, oh, I really am that powerful. No wonder they're all pressed. Your name got 'em heated for a reason. Because you're carrying weight, you still pretend you don't have. You walk into spaces like you're just there, but energy doesn't lie. People clock you even when they pretend they don't. They feel you before they see you. That's why your name sticks to their tongue like that, like something they're low-key addicted to, but swear they're over. And you downplay it. You brush it off. You laugh like, nah, it's not that deep. It is that deep. There are people replaying one conversation with you from months ago, dissecting your tone, your eye contact, the way you said their name. There are people still scrolling back to your old pics, like archaeologists digging for clues. There are people who can't even hear a song without thinking of you, and every time the beat drops, their chest gets tight, because it reminds them what they had, and what they'll never get back in that same form again. You're out here thinking you were just a phase in their life. You were the glitch in the matrix that showed them their whole reality was flimsy. It's why they're mad. It's why they're heated. It's why they're pressed about who you might be touching. You showed them what real feels like, and real doesn't leave the body quietly. Think about it. Why do they care so much about your next move if you are not that special? Why does their heart drop when your name lights up a screen they're looking at? Why are they grilling their partner like they're on trial every time you appear in conversation? Did you ever like them? Did you hook up? Do you still talk? Would you go back if you had the chance? They're not asking because they're curious. They're asking because they feel something. They feel your presence pulling at their reality like a loose thread. You know what that means, right? You're not just a person. You're a test of their loyalty, a test of their self-worth, a test of whether they've actually healed or just put a filter over old wounds. And when someone like you shows up, those wounds start screaming. You've been living like your body doesn't carry memory for other people. It does. That one night you sat with them and listened when they felt like they had nobody. That's stored. That random compliment you dropped when they were secretly at their lowest. That's stored. That time you refused to let someone talk down on them in front of you. That's stored too. Meanwhile, they might have failed you brutally, ignored you when you needed them, made you feel like an option, gaslit you into thinking you were doing too much just for wanting clarity. And still, somehow your name is the one echoing through their arguments. You got people asking, be honest, if they came back right now, what would you do? Are you sure you're over them? They don't even realize they're exposing themselves with those questions. They're admitting that your presence alone is enough to shake the foundation. You are a walking earthquake to fragile connections. Here's the part that stings but frees you if you're brave enough to swallow it. If people are fighting over you, it doesn't automatically mean they value you. Sometimes it just means they're terrified of losing their grip on the narrative. They'll say, they just flirt with everyone. They love attention. They're messy. Because if they paint you as the villain, they never have to admit something simple and uncomfortable. When I had them, I fumbled. You weren't asking for a throne. You were asking for consistency. You were asking for clear words instead of mixed signals. You were asking for actions that match the paragraphs they sent at 1 a.m. Instead, you got bare minimum dressed up as, that's just how I am. And when you finally got tired and walked, Suddenly the story became, they switched up, they changed, they think they're better. Yes, you did change. You got tired of betraying yourself just to stay in rooms that didn't clap when you breathed. Look, you've been dragged through enough emotional glass to know better than you're living. You've sat on your bed, staring at your phone, typing and deleting messages, arguing with yourself about whether you're being dramatic or whether they're actually just playing with you. You've watched your own standards crumble because you cared. You've accepted crumbs and called it dinner because you didn't want to be alone. And yet, even in that wounded version of you, your name had weight. Imagine what happens when you stop operating from your wounds and start moving from your worth. They think it's bad now with you half asleep to your power. Picture the meltdown when you really wake up and start saying, I don't go where I'm tolerated, I go where I'm treasured. That's when the arguments about you get nastier. That's when the late night stalking gets more desperate. That's when they start calling your growth ego, your boundaries, attitude, your peace, distance. You're not distant. You're done being emotionally discounted. Good day, my beautiful anomalies. You know who you are? The ones who never fit the blueprint, who tore up the map they handed you and said, nah, I'll just wing it. Welcome back to the place where madness makes sense. And logic? Logic gets laughed at. They came with blueprints, didn't they? Stacked high, flowcharts, graphs, PDFs, PowerPoints full of steps, how to win, how to manipulate, how to dominate, how to erase you. And oh, they studied you like a science project, dissected your silence, measured your reactions, timed your trauma. They were students of control, professors of deception, chess masters in their own heads. But you showed up barefoot, with glitter in your eyes and scars that didn't hide. No rules, no roadmap, just vibes. And in the end, checkmate. One move, one unexplainable, unteachable, unpredictable move. And they were done. You didn't just survive, you bewildered them. You didn't play the game, you broke the damn board. Because you weren't trying to win their war. You were vibing through the fire while they burned, trying to build a trap. They said you were too emotional, too impulsive, too raw, too much. But what they never understood is, you don't calculate chaos, you become it. See, they needed confirmation, proof, charts, evidence. They needed a guarantee that if they pulled string A, your soul would unravel at point B. But you were freestyle tragedy turned into living poetry. You didn't respond, you sonated. While they studied the strategy, you became the storm. And here's the twist they never saw coming. People who rely on tactics fold when the terrain changes. But people who run on energy, on instinct, madness, and raw, unfiltered truth, they adapt, they thrive. They turn betrayal into blueprint, heartbreak into fuel, and disrespect into a damn religion. You weren't playing their game. You were writing the sequel to their downfall with nothing but your intuition and a grin. And the best part? They knew. Oh, they knew that you weren't guessing. You were Zing. Your silence wasn't ignorance, it was calculation without math. Your chaos wasn't confusion, it was clarity that didn't ask for permission. While they asked, what's the next best move? You simply said, watch. Because here's the raw, ugly, divine truth they'll never swallow. They used manuals. You used madness. They used tactics. You used truth. They used logic. You used lightning. And the move they thought was checkmate for you was actually checkmate for them. Because the real queen never moved until it was too late for the board to breathe. You didn't need rules. You were the loophole. You didn't need revenge. You became the consequence. You didn't fight for validation. You existed, and that was the rebellion. So now, they're sitting in the ruins of their own plans, alone, confused, angry, because despite all their studying, all their manipulating, you made one move from the soul, and their kingdom crumbled. All vibe, no permission, no formula, just divine disruption. Because when it's real, when it's unshakable, you don't need to strategize your power. You just let it walk in the room. So to my fellow misfits, keep vibing, keep laughing in the face of scripts. Because while they flip pages looking for the answer, you are the riddle. You are the plot twist. You are the final move no one saw coming. You see, they always assumed the smartest player wins. That intellect, without intuition, was enough to conquer anything. But let me ask you this. What's a manual in a world that keeps rewriting itself every time you walk into the room? What good are tactics against someone who feels the betrayal before the lie is even spoken? Someone who doesn't just think 5 steps ahead. They dream in dimensions the game doesn't even acknowledge. You weren't just unpredictable. You were impossible to prepare for. Because they didn't understand. You were never playing to win. You were playing to wake them up. And that made you dangerous. Not because you were evil, but because you weren't desperate for control. You were comfortable in chaos. They treated this like a contest. You treated it like a frequency. They brought armor. You brought authenticity. They studied every version of power, but they never read you. And oh, how that haunted them. Because there is nothing more terrifying than facing someone who doesn't flinch. When you throw everything they should have feared. You didn't blink. You didn't beg. You didn't chase. You didn't fold. You watched. And in that stillness, you shattered every illusion they had of their control. They thought you were guessing. You were listening. They thought you were late. You were just letting their ego tire itself out. Because you knew the ones who scream the loudest about their strategy are always the ones panicking in silence when it doesn't work. And it didn't work, did it? All the plans, all the manipulations, all the carefully constructed illusions of dominance collapsed under the weight of your one single, unreadable move. Checkmate. And now they talk about you like a ghost they can't explain, a mystery they still haven't solved. How did they know? How did they win? How did they see it coming? Let me tell you how. Because when you live in the shadows long enough, you start hearing truths that sunlight never dares to speak. You start understanding things that logic can't touch. You start moving like a prophecy. And that scares people, that breaks people, because they realized too late you weren't reacting, you were remembering. And every move you made was never random. It was ancestral. It was spiritual. It was cosmic. It was the universe playing through your fingertips while they obsessed over algorithms. So now they sit there, staring at a board where all the pieces are gone, holding a manual that never mentioned you, because you weren't a piece. You were the hand that flipped the table. You were the moment the game stopped mattering. You didn't just win. You ended the game. Because when you walk in alignment with something bigger than ego, when your intuition speaks louder than their manipulation, when your vibe is louder than their lies, you don't have to scream, you don't have to prove, You don't have to explain. You just exist. And everything fake starts crumbling. One move, one look, one vibe. Checkmate. Let's go deeper, because you know it didn't end with the checkmate. No, that was just the moment the illusion died. What came after was revelation. You see, they thought the end of the game would break you, but what really shattered was their understanding of who you are. Because suddenly, the rules they clung to, irrelevant, the patterns they thought you'd follow, obsolete. They spent all their time learning how to control people, but never considered what happens when you face someone who has nothing left to prove and everything left to feel. You weren't playing for applause. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You weren't seduced by the outcome. You were embodying something they didn't even know existed. And that's the twist that keeps them up at night. They built strategies for every type of opponent, except the one who wasn't playing the same game. They studied reactions. You embodied reverberations. They plotted for personalities. You arrived as a force of nature. And when it all collapsed, they didn't just lose power, they lost certainty. And that's fatal for people who depend on control. You were their unsolvable equation, their untraceable signal, their unbreakable mirror. Because let me tell you something brutal. People who need control need you to be predictable. They need your pain to be visible. They need your moves to be calculable. But what happens when you stop caring about the outcome? What happens when you start moving for truth, not for trophies? What happens when you become the storm, not the soldier? What happens when you stop performing and start channeling? They lose. Not just the game. They lose themselves. Because your silence was surgical, your detachment divine, and your power. It wasn't loud, it was final. You didn't need revenge, you were the reset. You didn't need to prove your value, you were the valuation. You didn't rise to their bait, you sank their ship with stillness. And what hurts them the most? You smiled, you let go, you moved on. No parade, no spotlight, no ego. Just vibes, because at the end of the day, the one who moves in flow can never be trapped by those who move by fear. You were never theirs to figure out. You were the mirror of their own limitations, and when they tried to weaponize the rules, you became the glitch in their programming. One moment, one truth, one unshakable vibe. All right, here we are again. The lights have dimmed, the board is empty, and the so-called masterminds are still staring at the smoke rising from their own collapse, still trying to analyze your magic like it's just another pattern in a book. But the joke is this: you never followed the book, because you were never built for rules. You were built for revolutions. You don't strategize your essence, you radiate it. And when someone tries to contain a storm with a spreadsheet, well, we both know how that ends. They thought they were dealing with another pawn, another name on a list, another soul desperate for validation. But what they failed to comprehend is that when you've been through hell without begging for a shortcut, when you've watched people you loved turn into monsters, when you've stood at the edge of your own mind and didn't flinch, you don't fear loss. You become the fire that burns through false connections. See, people who live by strategy manuals, they crave predictability. They need the illusion of control. They get high off of knowing how others will react. But you're not a reaction. You're a response from the universe itself. They wanted to beat you with discipline, with order, with quiet manipulation dressed up as logic. But you were already speaking a language their structure could never translate. You were chaos wrapped in clarity, madness braided with meaning, divinity dressed in discomfort. You didn't need to yell, you didn't need to scheme, you didn't need to fight for your worth, because you were the storm they didn't forecast. And now they sit there, stunned, flipping back through their pages, rewatching every interaction, recalculating every word they said to you like there was some hidden clue. And guess what? There was. You knew all along, but you kept smiling. You let them think you didn't see, because you weren't seeking justice. You were setting up clarity. Let me tell you what makes you terrifying. You forgave them, not because they earned it, but because you refused to let their poison rot inside your soul. You walked away, not because you were weak, but because you didn't need to win in a game designed to distract you from your power. They wanted war. You gave them a lesson. They wanted a breakdown. You gave them silence, the kind that echoes forever. And here's the twist that keeps haunting them. They never expected you to elevate. They never expected your scars to become sigils. They never expected your detachment to become your dominance. They never expected the person they tried to belittle to become the benchmark they can't reach anymore. Because now, they're stuck, spinning, trying to recreate the script you set on fire. And you're vibing, you're rising, you're unbothered, unbent, unavailable. Not because you're running, but because you've outgrown the battlefield entirely. Because once you learn to dance with your own demons, the little tricks people play don't impress you anymore. Once you master your silence, you don't need to shout for recognition. Once you tune into your frequency, manuals start looking like children's books. So when they ask, "How did you win?" you just smile and say, "I didn't win. I remembered who I was." One move, one moment, one vibe too deep for them to decode. All right, let's stop pretending this was about a game. Let's stop acting like it was ever about chess or tactics or steps and counters. No, this was always about energy. This was always about frequency. This was always about power without permission. You see, when they sat down to play their game, they thought the goal was to win. But you came to transcend. You came to rewrite the rules with your very existence, and that's where they lost, before it even began. They planned for an opponent. They never prepared for a legend in progress. They underestimated you because you didn't brag, because you didn't broadcast your pain, because you didn't react when they tried to corner you. But what they never grasped was this. You weren't avoiding the game. You were studying the architecture of the entire arena. You weren't looking to win that moment. You were looking to burn the blueprint and build your own universe. You weren't there to dominate people. You were there to disrupt paradigms. And that, my friend, that's not something a strategy manual can cover. Let's be clear. They used manipulation as a tool. You used vibration as a weapon. They tried to trigger you with rehearsed moves. You responded with energy they couldn't name. They thought they had mastered psychology, but you channeled the quantum. Because you don't just walk through rooms anymore. You shift gravitational fields. You don't speak to be heard, you speak to awaken. Or not at all. They wanted control of your choices. But you became a creature of alignment. You don't move for applause. You move because the universe nudged you. You don't follow paths. You create storms that carve new ones. And now, The echo of your silence is louder than their loudest screams. You see, they thought legacy came from being seen, but yours comes from being felt. They thought power was in strategy, but yours was encoded in your soul. They thought timing meant rushing. You waited in stillness until the moment cracked open like prophecy. And in that instant, that perfect second where everything aligned, you moved. Not just physically, not just mentally, but existentially. And when you made your one move, the vibration it sent out, it wrote the narrative. Suddenly the room got colder, the lights dimmed, their confidence cracked, and they realized they weren't dealing with a person anymore. They were facing a force. They weren't up against a strategy. They were facing a frequency that couldn't be outplayed. Because people who live from the manual can only operate in the dimension they understand. But you're not from that dimension anymore. You evolved, you ascended silently, privately, elegantly, brutally. So no, it was never just checkmate. It was transformation. It was ascension. It was legacy in motion. And now, they can keep their books, they can keep their maps, they can keep their steps, their outlines, their rules, because you've become the exception no system can contain. And that's the kind of win they'll never recover from. All right, let's venture into darker territories. You've walked this path, felt the pain, tasted the betrayal. But here's where it gets interesting, where it goes from simply winning the game to becoming the judge. Because what they never realized, my friend, is that when you disconnect from the rules, when you stop living by their expectations, when you're no longer a pawn in their grand illusion, you don't just survive, you transform. And once you've ascended to that level of divine vibration, the moment you stop trying to win or even play, you become the very force that passes judgment on everything that tried to bring you down. You see, they tried to label you, tried to box you in with their constraints, tried to use their rules and their strategies to predict your every move. But what happens when the one you're trying to predict isn't even bound by time or space anymore? What happens when the one who stands in front of you has already seen everything before you even took your first step? That's when divine punishment arrives. And it doesn't come with a storm. It doesn't come with a warning. It comes in the form of their own reflection. Because here's the truth. When they played their dirty little game, they thought they were the ones controlling the board. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't playing for control at all. You were playing for truth. And the moment you embrace truth, the moment you live by nothing but your own essence, the moment you operate in alignment with what you know to be real, you become untouchable. You become the event that shifts everything around you. You become the very force that breaks them down from the inside. See, they wanted to be the puppeteers. They wanted to pull your strings, control your every move, whisper in your ear like they were the ones who held the power. But in their arrogance, in their delusion, they forgot that you don't have strings. You are the storm that tears their illusion apart. And that storm doesn't rage. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't demand validation. No, it's quiet. It's slow. It's patient. But it is relentless. It seeps in. It unravels their false sense of security, piece by piece. It gnaws away at the foundation they thought was solid. It whispers in the darkest corners of their minds, where their fear resides. And by the time they realize that their whole world is crumbling, By the time they understand that their little plan, their little strategy, was never going to work against you, they're already too far gone, because you're not playing their game anymore. You've become the consequence, and here's the ultimate truth they'll never escape. What they do to you will be returned to them 1,000-fold. Not as vengeance, not as punishment, but as truth. Because when you stand in your own light, when you let your soul radiate at a frequency no one else can touch, when you start living in your own authentic power, those who tried to tear you down, manipulate you, use you as a stepping stone, they become the architects of their own undoing. They built their house on lies, on manipulation, on empty promises and false control. But you built yours on your vibe, on your truth, on the deepest parts of yourself that no one can touch. And the moment you stepped out of their world, the moment you stopped needing anything from them, that's when their punishment began. When you freed yourself from their chains, they suddenly realized they had nothing left to hold on to.